Hey everyone, it's Jamie Lambert with SportsNews.com. You on here for our fourth episode of Salt, Pepper, and don't forget the sugar. Uh, Sugar told us he was selling cars, but Connor he posted something on Snapchat that picture of his boat and it says it's time to free his mind. So Sugar's probably out doing a little fishing, which is fine. Uh, we are good. We are ecstatic to see Pepper back. I didn't have to. I had Criminal Minds on him for a minute. Morgan and Hodge and all those guys. And actually Reed's the one that tracked him down. He sent me a text in a couple minutes and was like, he's stuck. Coming through the hills of West Virginia. Uh, but Craig, it's good to have you back here.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Well, we made a joke about it. Obviously, the first episode that you were unavailable, that you was on a reporting trip, covering the transfer portal. So what I do want to do, being the big SEC fan that you are, the transfer portal has completely changed college football. I mean, completely. And obviously now with Tagaloa now transferred from Auburn going to Maryland, so kind of get being being a big Auburn fan, what's your thoughts on that specific transfer? Now him going to the Big Ten at Maryland.
Well, first of all, man, I thought that move was a little weird. I couldn't really understand why he picked Maryland because I mean I've seen him play. To me he looked like a carbon copy of his brother, just a right-hander, man. But I wish him all the luck there at Maryland. Apparently, he saw something that nobody else saw, or his family felt, pretty confident in that move. But I tell you what, he'll make that Maryland team, if they're a C team, he can bump them up. They'll be a B or an A team just from him being on campus. But I think as far as the transfer portal, there's good things about it and bad things. Like if it's somebody coming to, of course, my team or someone else's team, it's all good. But I've seen stories where there's kids that are transferring out and they get to play immediately, the very next year, whereas there'll be another kid that moves because his mother may be dying of cancer and NCAA won't grant him immediate, eligibility. He has to sit out a year. So, I mean, I don't see they got to be more consistent on that end.
Yeah, I know that it started in basketball, a few years ago, that there was some shakeup about these kids not getting the playing time that they thought they was going to get, or let's just use West Virginia's coach as an example. Coach Huggins, obviously when he's a recruiter, he's a good guy, and telling moms, and I'm sure he's honest. I've never heard Coach Huggins to not be honest, but the lighter side of Coach Huggins, and then when you get in, when you get into a practice with Coach Huggins, and he rips your ass the first time, and some of these kids are like, hell with this, I don't want no part of this, I want to transfer. So then when you wanted to do that, you had to have the coach's quote unquote permission, to be able to be eligible right away without sitting a year out. Not saying that happened to West Virginia, but just using Coach Huggins as an example. But the thing is if you can't, you're not paying these kids. You are giving these kids an education, but you're not paying them. And if they can't make a decision to commit to Duke or Kentucky or OU or Marshall or wherever, and in a year or two, and they don't feel it's a good fit, my personal opinion is they should be able to go wherever they want to go. And we see it that, with college coaches, that they get these small time, small school coaches get these big multi-million-dollar deals that, alumni is having to pay the money, at VCU or Butler or, wherever. And then, someone like Texas comes along and the coach is gone, 1 year into a 5-year deal. So if a coach is able to do that, then I feel like a player, I mean, the player should be able to do it more than the coach should be able to do it, because of contractual agreements and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I agree. Now they've added a little wrinkle to that NCAA basketball, where these kids don't even have to go and play 1 year of college. They can go straight to the G League. So they can actually, like, if they're good enough, they can bypass that first year of college. But I don't know, that there's a lot of things. I can see both sides of the argument. Some people will say, oh, well, they're getting an education, which is a good thing, of course. And then they get the playing experience and the time on the court and stuff. But then you've got these other kids that are just phenomenal, and they could go immediately from high school to the NBA and actually end up being a starter. But I'd hate to see a lot of kids try to, follow that game plan. Whereas, I hate to see a lot of them just jump into that and they're in over their head. They don't have the experience. They start getting making a lot of money and end up getting themselves put, in trouble and stuff. And sometimes I feel like a certain kid may need that, few years in college, or at least 1 year in college, to kind of mature and get ready for the next step. And then there's some that can just jump right to it.
Right. Well, last college football season, the college playoffs, you had in the semifinals, you had Burrow, you had Jalen Hurts. Help me out. Who else? Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor and Jalen, Trevor, to
And Burrow.
Yeah, and Burrow. Yeah, there's your four.
Yeah, so you had basically three transfers out of the four. In the semifinals. So it is affecting college football. These 5-star quarterbacks come into these bigger programs. And we talked a little bit about Burrow in episode 1. Being coached by the Ohio State coaches, which are obviously top-notch quarterback coaches and whatnot, and becoming a better player and then being able to transfer. And I personally don't see anything wrong with it. If a coach can go, then a player should be able to do whatever he wants to do, in between years. Now, if things do change down the road that that they start getting paid for likeness and endorsements and whatnot, which I think is coming. But but the only thing that's bad is the guys that is the quarterback for the Brennan guy, for instance, at LSU, is he busted his tail and thinks, all right, now I'm gonna be a starter, it's my turn, and then here comes a guy like Burrow in and beats him out for the spot. And what that has done, like at Ohio State, when Fields went there, then Martell ends up going to Miami. So it ended up, that setting off blocks falling dominoes, that there was quarterbacks transferring all over the place.
Yeah, he ended up going somewhere else after Miami, didn't he? Didn't he enter it again?
I think he did, and that I don't know a lot about that guy, so I can't touch on it a lot. But that would be the bad side to allowing them the opportunity just to transfer and be eligible right away is somebody that maybe maybe just feels like they're entitled to something and, entitled to a starting spot and can't do it. And then he jumps around these 5 different colleges in 5 years or, whatnot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I'll tell you a good example of a team that was loaded at one time at quarterback, and then the transfers ended up being starters everywhere else. Was Justin? You remember when Justin Fields, Jacob Eason, and
From
I'm drawing a blank. Yeah, they were all on the same team at the same time, man, at Georgia.
right.
So I mean, of course, those other two, that was a good move on them to get out of there. They end up moving on and being starting quarterbacks at other Division I big schools. So
Right. Well,
yeah,
we touched on that. The one thing that I seen today that I seen on Facebook that we touched on a little bit about the Dak Andy Dalton comparison, in episode 1 when we was talking about Burrow. And the report is, I had it on my phone, but and I was going to quote it, but basically the report is, the rumor is that he turned down a 5-year, $175 million deal. Which works out to just north, probably somewhere 33, 34 million a year. And Dak turned it down. And in that report, what is being said is, that Dak is looking for somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 million a year the last year. And I know we had our opinions on that, and earlier, but we never heard any dollars. And if Jerry Jones is one of the most, let's just say it, one of the most arrogant owners in professional sports, not just the NFL, but professional sports. But he's done very well for himself, and he does build top-notch facilities, like the stadium in Dallas, and he is a money guy, and he's a money first guy.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and give me your thoughts first. What you think he's doing with Dak's agent saying, I want 45 million a year.
I think Dak Prescott is a good quarterback, but I don't think he's that kind of money good. I always thought, I assumed that the reason why they couldn't finish with the contract talks was maybe there was something in the language that he wasn't looking for. I didn't know if it was a money figure they were looking at, but of course now we know. But I think it was a good decision on their part to go out and get Andy. I know that. And like you said, Jerry Jones, he's a money first guy. If they end up getting rid of Dak, that frees up a lot of cap space, and he's got a good quarterback sitting there, ready to play us playoff experience. So I just don't see the 45 million, man. That's too steep for me.
Right. Yeah. And, paying that, with the money that they've already paid out to Zeke and to Amari Cooper and, their defense guys. And if they give Dak that money, they're going to be playing on a lot of their starters are going to be playing on like veteran minimum salaries, to be able to get under the salary cap. And the one thing I was reading in some of the comments on the Facebook post that, nobody is saying that Andy Dalton is better than Dak Prescott or that he's got more of an upside than Dak Prescott. But if you're paying a quarterback, period, if you're paying a quarterback $10 million compared to 35 million or 45 million, that's $25 million that can be spent somewhere else. And
Mm-hmm.
and what they were saying was basically the percentage. Somebody quoted on there that Andy Dalton's 85% of Dak, which is probably a fair statement. Uh, as far as overall quarterback, but the thing that burns my ass about Dak, and that watching ESPN and that some of the guys talking about this is they that Dak hasn't done anything. He hasn't won. He hasn't won a Super Bowl. He hasn't put the Cowboys on his shoulders. Yes, he had fabulous numbers last year. But you know what? I mean, the Bengals have had Kelly Smith and David Klingler and guys like that threw for a lot of yards. Jameis Winston threw for 30 touchdowns last year and 5,000 yards, but he threw 30 picks.
Yeah.
And he's making $1 million. As
Yeah.
backup or / third string quarterback, at New Orleans. So
Mm-hmm.
I just don't see. I see it as Dak as being a selfish player, and in all reality, if you think you're on the verge of being great, then sign a 2-year deal for $20 million. Jerry Jones would sign that in a heartbeat, I guarantee you. And then prove yourself. Go get to the NFC Championship game. Go, get to the Super Bowl, win a Super, whatever. At least win a couple playoff games, win the NFC East, and then say, okay, guys, I'm worth $35 million. But at this point right now, I mean, he's not. I mean, he's the 10th best quarterback in the league. He's not the best quarterback in the league.
No, not by far. He, just like you said, his resume doesn't fit his pay. You know what I mean? He definitely needs to prove some stuff. Now, like Jameis Winston, like you said, he threw for over 5,000 yards, but he threw a ton of picks. Had he thrown half of that in picks, like instead of 30 through 15, we'd be talking about him as the MVP of the league. I mean, that's still ridiculous, but he's. I mean, that's just a steep number, man. And I think it does show that he's just kind of selfish and, I don't know what's going on. He could be thinking about anything. There's no telling how we know. But I just don't – I don't see how he came up with that number and seeing these other quarterbacks that make that kind of money and all their accomplishments and thinking, oh, well, you know what, I'm just as good as that. Yeah, I don't get it.
Right. All right. Well, they I think then I seen that basically Dallas was they polled like 20 sports writers and like 10 of them picked the Cowboys to win the AFC or the NFC East with Dak, and like 8 of them picked it with Dalton. And then there were some other numbers as far as the playoffs go and stuff like that. But like I said, $7 million to $35 million. I mean, that's $28 million that you can. That's that's 2 stud players. Max out. And if it's only going to. If at the quarterback position, if you're only talking about a game or 2 difference or 1.5 or whatever, and you can save that money, then you save that money. And then I also seen, I don't even remember where I seen it at, but basically, all these teams making their runs and being successful when they're on rookie contracts with quarterbacks. Because once you start paying a quarterback $30 million or $35 million or whatever, you just, that's quick math in my head. That's almost 18% of your salary cap as a quarterback, and it's tough to have players around them once you start paying that. And then you got guys like Tom Brady, who's at New England forever, that and Ben Roethlisberger's the same way, which I'm not a Steeler fan by no means, but those kind of, okay, guys, yeah, I want my money, but I also want to win. So let's restructure the deal, whatever we got to do, and make numbers work. I want as much money as I can, obviously, but I don't. If I'm not going to have a running back or a wide receiver, I don't want 35 million. If you can give me 25 million and give me a number one receiver and a good running back, then do that. But that I just don't. I mean, right now I just don't see that being any option for Dak and his agent.
Yeah, I agree. You would think that he would, take like a 2 year or something like that to prove himself. But man, I mean that's just selfish. Like as far as like you mentioned Brady. Brady's got 6 rings. You know what I mean? He's seems like he's still on top of the game right now. So I mean, as long as he's playing like that, I mean, I'm anxious to see him playing with Tampa Bay this next season. But I mean, he in my eyes, he's the only one in the league that could like dictate exactly what he needs to be paid.
And he's orchestrating, workouts right now with his wide receivers to get timing down and stuff like that. And Dak's hosting, dinner parties or whatever it was I seen a couple weeks ago that he had the law called, with the social distancing and and all that stuff. Yeah, he's
I heard about that.
Party at his house or whatnot. Well, we will. Obviously it's Memorial Weekend. Episode 1, we had on Dad's birthday. He was a Vietnam veteran, and probably one of the proudest ones that I ever met. I will tell you a little story, and kind of based on servicemen and respect that they should be given. We was at the Athens Sandlot. I think it was about 4 years ago, and usually that tournament is held in like late June, early July, depending on what age group you're in. And we were there playing 10U. I believe Asher was there playing with us, and we were watching a game on Fenway Park. I was, and the boys were obviously not watching the game. They were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. But there was a foul ball hit, and there was a guy sitting in a chair between home plate and the first base dugout. And a kid retrieved the foul ball from the parking lot. It was a player. I can't even remember what team it was off of, but it was a 10-year-old kid, a 9 or 10-year-old kid. And he comes barreling back through with the foul ball. You know how kids are at games like that. And then they kept run up to the dugout. And this guy, the older gentleman sitting there, had a Vietnam hat on. A Vietnam veteran, had the years on it. And that kid went up, got the coach's attention, handed the game ball to him, and then he turned around and he walked over to the guy. And I was close enough to him where I could hear him. I was sitting on the bleachers about 10 or 12 feet from him. And, he stopped and, and stuck his hand out, shook the guy's hand, said, hey, I appreciate your service. Thank you for everything you've done for me, for my parents, for the country. It's greatly appreciated. And I see a lot of, I know a guy in Chillicothe, the guy's name's Dustin Hartley. And he is a big advocator of the Wounded Warrior Project. And that they do several things up in the Chillicothe area. And, I was fortunate enough that he reached out to me a couple times. We've done shirts for him and whatnot. And then there's another guy in Wellston, or I think he lives in Jackson now. But his name's Rex Stroth, and he's a ex-military guy, and there's a lot of there's a lot of servicemen out there right now that are fighting demons that a lot of people look at them and shake their head, and they don't realize what they've been through. Dad had his moments. You did not. That was one of those things. If you didn't go see him on Veterans Day, your ass was in trouble. If you went to see him on Veterans Day, your ass was still in trouble. Uh, it was just one of those days that that brought back a lot of stuff to him, and especially with Vietnam, where without getting into the history side of it, a lot of those guys that came back, weren't and didn't feel welcomed when they came back, because of the war and the reason behind the war and and whatnot. But so one, I want to send a shout out to Dad. Spending his first Memorial Weekend in heaven. I love him to death. He was, anything regarding an American flag or anything he could do to help anybody, whether it was a veteran or whether it was a kid that just lost his mom or dad or whatever he did. And he was one of the fortunate ones, because he still fought demons from time to time about it, but he wasn't homeless and he wasn't living on the street and he wasn't caught up in stuff that he shouldn't have got caught up in. That our society nowadays, some people look at them as trash or pieces of shit or whatever, when that really they have no idea what's going on with them and no idea what's going on in their head. So with it, and the reason I brought that all up was just to kind of let people know, if you see a guy, if you see a guy out that needing something, yeah, there's a bunch of douchebags that are throwing $3,000 in a book bag every day that are standing on the side of the road collecting money. But there's also a bunch of veterans that don't know what they're doing and don't know how to get help, or that really need help. So if you see one of those guys, I guess is what I'm saying. If you see one of those guys, I mean, be that 9-year-old kid or be that 10-year-old kid that that takes 30 seconds, and that guy, that older gentleman, probably went home with a damn smile on his face, seen his wife, and said, "Can you believe a kid came up to me and thanked me for my service?" And because they do appreciate it. That they don't want noticed, but yet they appreciate it when something like that happens. So leading into that, I seen a thing on Facebook with your dad, and I'll just kind of let you take it over. I tried to find it on Facebook. I know it's been 7-8 months ago. I couldn't remember or whatnot, but I'll just let you go ahead and talk about
it. Yeah, that story was. It's a blog called Our Southern Souls, and I guess this lady that writes this blog came across Dad, and he sticks out like a sore thumb down there because he's got a big F-650 truck, and it's completely wrapped in the Blue Angels, and just about every vehicle he's got, or if it's a trailer or whatever it has, it's got a Navy SEAL on it or American flag or something like that on it, so you know that he's military. Everybody knows him down there as Big Ray. So she ran across him, and I guess got a little bit of his backstory and stuff. So she wrote up a really nice article about that. That was really cool. And actually, that next day there was a benefit that a band was playing there in Foley, and invited Dad to it. So I called Dad and told him that he's been invited to this benefit thing for, it was like a veterans benefit thing. So he goes out there, and the band actually brought him up on stage and presented him with a medal. So he was tickled to death over that. That was awesome. But yeah, my dad's cut from a different cloth, man. Whenever he went into the Navy, he went in when he was 15. So all he needed was his parents' signature, and boom, he's gone. So he spent 30 years and 1 day in the Navy. And if you ask him, it's not 30 years. Don't ever say 30 years. It's 30 years and a day. So, yeah, he's something else. Luckily, I still have him with me. There's a lot of good men that we don't have that we celebrate on Memorial Day weekend. That people need to remember that. But he's a trip. He's definitely a different type of man. He was Navy. I mean, in and out. That's all me and my brother knew. We grew up next to the Pensacola Naval Air Station, so we were lucky enough to be able to go out on the beach on some weekends and watch the Blue Angels practice, going up and down the beach. That was really cool. But yeah, he every Veterans Day or Memorial Day, I'll talk to my dad nearly every day anyway. But I always make sure on those days I'll call and talk to him. He was lucky enough to not really suffer from a lot of PTSD or anything like that. But I'll tell you like this: I believe it was his last 8 years in the Navy, he was a drill instructor. So you better believe when we were younger, me and Ray, our rooms were clean and our beds were made.
Full Metal Jacket, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, he was born in 1936, and he. So I mean, he's been through some different eras. He's seen about everything. Been around the world 3 times. But I mean, to this day, I won't back talk him. I'm still scared to death of him.
Right. Well, the one yeah, you said that where he joined the Navy when he was 15, and I'll share a good story on Dad that maybe people know, maybe people don't know. But he was a senior in high school and hated with a passion. And this would have been like 19. Like 69 probably, and he gets in a fight with his buddy on purpose because they wanted expelled from school so they could enlist in the army. So they get in a fight, and then they get sent to the principal's office. And so if there's any kids listening right now that are in high school, probably need to turn it off, or parents turn it away, because I'm not this by any way, shape, or form. But back then was a time, obviously. So they weren't going to suspend them or expel them or anything. The principal wasn't. So as that was going on, Dad Dad hauled off and punched the principal, and he was like, "Well, now you're going to expel me now?" Like, yeah, get the hell out of here. So then, Dad and his buddy leave, and they go and enlist in the Army, at 17, with, knowing the Vietnam was going on, but that's what they wanted to do. So, I guess, we'll kind of wrap things up here in the next few minutes, but it was, and I know it's a sports show, but obviously on Memorial Weekend or Veterans Day or whatnot, we kind of need to step away from it. But we, obviously, I'll give you a minute, Craig, if you want, and if so maybe some veterans listening or whatnot, or to tell us a good story on your dad. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, one of the big driving forces for Dad when he was wanting to go into the Navy so young. A lot of people don't know that, or know this, but he grew up in Morgantown, just south of Morgantown, West Virginia. So he's from a coal mine family. So for him, it was either going in the coal mine or going in the military. Well, he had already had his father and his oldest brother die in a coal mine collapse years ago. So, I mean, that made his mind up real quick. So he went into the military then and never looked back. He said it was the best decision of his life. He loved it, and retired in 82, I believe. But of course he wanted me and my brother also to go into the military, which that's one of my regrets. I kind of wish I had, but I ended up going to school and stuff. But um, he that was a big thing for him because I mean his family had to go through losing his dad and his oldest brother, and the coal mine collapsed, and they just sealed the mine up. They didn't even go in for rescue or anything; they just sealed it up. So that was his big thing, and it turned out to work really well for him. I'll tell you one funny story is, well, not necessarily funny, but after 9/11, he went and tried to re-enlist. That's how hardcore my dad is. After 9/11, he tried to go and re-enlist, and they wouldn't let him. They kept saying, "Chief, you gotta go home. You can't re-enlist. We'd love to have you, but we can't have you." But he's something else, man. But he wanted back on the ship. That's for sure.
Right. Well, like I said, we've gotten to know each other pretty well, coaching and watching our kids grow up together. And it was, when I seen that story, I guess, one of the things that, when you're sitting around a campfire or sitting around a hotel pool or, whatnot, you just kind of talk about the day and the kids and whatnot. And it was but I enjoyed seeing that story on your dad. And some of those things that you don't I mean, you could know a guy pretty well, but you may not know their parents, you may not know their situation, but just in the hustle and bustle that's of the world that we live in. But it was good to hear, and I'm glad he's doing well. I appreciate everything he's done, for the country, and actually that's what was funny. The first thing you said about it was you talked about his truck, his big truck, and that's what I kept saying. I don't know where I seen it at. I don't know. All I know is there he is standing, and he had a big ass truck behind him.
Yeah.
In the picture.
Yeah, and you probably just saw just Blue Angels on the tailgate. I can't remember. I'll have to send you that picture. I know I've got it somewhere in my phone or somewhere, but yeah, like the older he gets, the bigger his truck gets.
Right. How the hell does he get in
it? Carefully. He's got quite a few steps going up in there, but yeah, he gets in there and takes his dog with him too. So right. Ginger's got her side, and he's got his side.
What kind of dog is it?
It's a chocolate lab.
Well, maybe the lab stands there, and he steps up on it, and he gets in. And then the lab goes around and jumps in.
Yeah, there it is.
All right. Well, we, again, Memorial Weekend. Craig, I love the stories about your dad. Loved hearing them, and I'm sure everyone else did too. We'll kind of leave it at this. We spent a little bit of time talking sports and a little bit of time talking, talking servicemen. The one thing that, to leave it, there's, like I said, Dustin Hartley, the Wounded Warrior project that he does, I think their slogan is "Until There's None," talking about, suicides from veterans, on a daily basis. I think the last time I seen, I think the rate was like 22 a day, in the country. And, 22 is not a big number, but he's exactly right. Or actually, it's not until there's one, it's until there's none. I'm sorry. So when those people come back, as a community, and parents, grandparents, teach your kids to respect those guys. They may be fighting stuff that you don't know. They may be perfectly fine, but you still respect the hell out of them. I mean, they've seen shit and done shit that that no matter how bad life is, here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, or Sugar in Wellston, or wherever, no matter how bad life is, none of us had it, has been through and witnessed as much as our servicemen and women have. So, before we completely wrap it up, I hope every veteran out there, every active military personnel, enjoys their weekend. And but again, teach the kids at a young age to to respect those guys and gals, and and anything that anybody can take out of this, that that those guys go through more shit in their head, that the ones that have problems or issues, they go through more shit in their head in one day than most people go through in a year. So happy Memorial Day. Craig, I appreciate you being on. Just cracked open a beer.
Hey, you're ahead of me.
So
I gotta catch up.
Again, happy Memorial Day to everybody. Appreciate you guys listening. Craig, I'm beginning to think that you and Ryan don't like each other.
I know we're missing each other, man. I think I think what it is. He wants to fight me over the pepper.
Well, here's the thing, though. Did you listen? I said you're the pepper, and he goes, no, baby, I'm the sugar. And I was like, you gotta make up your mind.
I mean, one or the other, man.
Right. Yeah. You can't ever tell with Milliken, and that's he. I mean, I was giving him the pepper roll. Day one, the first day you missed, and he wanted no part of it. He was like, "Nuh-uh, I'm the sugar, baby."
I'm the sugar.
So
Well, yeah,
I think he just wants to be an asshole, to be honest with
you. Yeah. Keep us on our toes.
Right, exactly. All right, well, we'll be back on here next Friday. I hope everyone has a good weekend. Don't drink too many beverages. Spend time with your loved ones.
Stay safe.
Yeah, stay safe. Family, and service guys and gals, we appreciate the hell out of you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks again, Craig.
All right, bud. See ya.